I'm going to call the subcommittee to order, and we will get started. We've got 5 bills on the docket this morning that we should be able to roll through fairly quickly, I think, and because I know there are a lot of folks that need to be in other places, as do I. As you may have noticed and heard from the clerk's announcement yesterday, I was actually scheduled to chair 2 subcommittees simultaneously, and I'm very thankful for Delegate Byron for doing that. Absent Hermione Granger's time turner, I couldn't figure out how I could do that. And since I don't have one of those, if anybody ever finds one, please let me know where I can pick one up, because I think that would be very handy around this place sometimes. So, very good. All right. Well, let's start with taking the roll. We'll get everybody logged in here. All right. I think everybody is accounted for that is in their seats. So we will start up this morning. And the first bills that we have are bills number 1444 and 1467. And because of the way that I think that this is going to run, we're going to ask Delegate Wyatt to present first, and then we'll have Delegate Ware weigh in, and we'll start with that. So, Delegate Wyatt.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I am very aware of the direction of my bill. I don't want to belabor you all's time, so I will just say how important an election bill is to restore integrity and confidence of every Virginian that cast a ballot today. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I should. It's the only route I care to go.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Delegate Wyatt. And because these 2 bills are virtually identical, we're going to ultimately, and we'll take action on 1444. Delegate Ware's bill, and then we'll see where we are with 1467 and come back on that. So if I could have a motion to pass by temporarily.
Second.
All right, and without objection, we will pass by 1467 temporarily. And Delegate Ware, 1444. Please come tell us about your
Chairman,
bill.
and as for being in 2 places at once, I understand Delegate Van Valkenburg knows how to do that kind of levitation, so just speak to him.
I appreciate knowing where to go. So that's
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be with you all this morning. This bill. First, I'm going to ask you to adopt a substitute for House Bill 1444, very much trimmed down.
All right, very good. Second, if we could report the substitute. We ought to get that around to everybody. Okay, we'll go that way with it. All right, so the substitute is before us. Delegate Ware?
All right. As I said, with the substitute, this measure becomes a slender version. It has been on Weight Watchers slenderer than its former self. It does one thing and one thing only. It restores the photo identification requirement for voters participating in Virginia's elections. Moreover, it provides for that modest number of citizens who may not possess a photo identification by furnishing to local registrars the funding for photo equipment in each registrar's office in the Commonwealth. And the chairman of this committee has made provision that expense will be covered. She informs me. So in case that question should come up. I'll be brief. Most of you are familiar with this, but I wanted to highlight a couple of elements as to why I bring this bill before the committee this year. Why should we restore photo ID for voters? 35 states have some version of identity requirement. Many of them, most of those have a photo ID. Others have some version of an identification requirement, and they do so for several reasons. First of all, in overwhelming numbers, not modest, not a incremental, not a plurality, in overwhelming numbers, Americans favor photo identification. The most recent poll that I could find, a Monmouth poll earlier this year, found that 80% of Americans support photo identification. That support crosses party lines, crosses regions, crosses wealth and education, male and female. It's a majority in each subset that I could find for it. Secondly, it's the simplest and most basic reform to dramatically increase election security and thereby increasing confidence in elections. And, we've had several elections of late that have been a matter of dispute, but I'd bring you back to the year 2000, when there was a dispute that trended a different direction than more recent ones about having confidence in elections. And after that election, particularly the Florida hanging Chad controversy, there was a commission set up that was headed by two prominent Americans, former Secretary of State James Baker and former President Jimmy Carter. Among the things that commission looked at was how to ensure trust in elections. And they identified this as an essential form of ensuring trust. Thirdly, and in a very practical sense, it can speed voter check-in when you get there, particularly on Election Day, to receive a ballot and reduce lines because you've got that simple idea as to who you are. I think we all agree that every legal vote should be counted. And with photo identification, we can help all of Americans, all Virginians, trust that people voting are who they say they are, while at the same time improving election administration. That, Mr. Chairman, is my request.
All right, thank you. Delegate Ware, questions from the committee?
Do we need to move the substitute?
I think we already did. Yeah, okay. We already moved the substitute. So any questions from the committee for the patron? All right, anyone here in the audience? Yes.
Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry, I didn't press the button. A question for the patron. Delegate Ware, I'm just curious, as I'm looking at the part about the registrar will obtain a photograph and a signature of the voter, I mean, is that something as simple as somebody is there and they have their phone and they take a picture of somebody and take a picture of their signature and they vote? And I'm just trying to understand because this could be a really low threshold for using someone's phone camera, or it could be an elaborate piece of machinery. So I'm just trying to understand what your intent is.
Let me make sure I understand your question, Delegate Reed. I'm not sure I followed exactly the trend of your inquiry.
Well, it says the department shall promulgate rules and regulations to obtain a photograph and signature of a voter who does not have a form. So then what? So you're just saying the Department of Elections would come up with the rules for doing that?
They would establish a framework as to how that would happen.
Okay. And then we, meaning the General Assembly, would then fund whatever they come up with, because we don't want this to be an unfunded mandate on the localities.
As I mentioned at the outset, Chairman Ranson indicated to me that the funding for photo equipment would be available for each registrar across the Commonwealth.
But we don't know how much that would cost.
I don't have that figure, but I can certainly get it for you.
And again, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, and I'm just trying to understand, because it could be something as simple as a phone, or it could be an elaborate photo ID signature scanning device that does some type of matching that might be $10,000 a piece.
The last time that this was considered, we looked at equipment similar to what you'd find at a DMV for your license photo. It could be something different. One of the states, I think it is Florida, does have that kind of a thing where you've got a little whatever it is, picture that gives you like you get your menu at a restaurant nowadays. So it could be something as high tech as that. High tech for this low tech guy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you. Any others? All right. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill?
Good morning. Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose this bill. I think that there's a misconception that voters are able to show up and vote without an ID, and that is not so. There are all sorts of things that voters can use to identify themselves. Most do use a photo ID, and the laws that we have right now allow more people who don't have access to a photo ID. Maybe they don't drive anymore, maybe they're elderly, maybe they're indigent. And so to require a photo ID puts an additional barrier in front of these voters to keep them from voting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I know we have some folks that are signed up online. And because I'm going to take everybody that was signed up for 1444 and 67, it looks like the same list there. So online, do we have Laurie Moore? Ms. Moore? I think you're muted there, it appears. Yeah. But we still are not hearing you, Ms. Moore. I don't know if this, do we have volumes turned down?
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I support both bills, House Bill 1444 as well as 1467. Photo ID is the most inexpensive and efficient way to ensure that a voter is who they say they are. As the delegate stated, over 80% of Americans support photo ID. Indeed, we all must show a photo ID at some point in our everyday transactions to buy liquor, to access your safe deposit box, to when I go to Macy's and try to use my charge card, they require a photo ID for that. Current Virginia law is backwards on photo ID, as it is only required once a voter has discovered that someone else has voted in their name. By then, it is too late, and that invalid vote cannot be pulled back. So photo ID should be required on the front end, not on the back end. Once an invalid vote has been cast, it is impossible to discern who that voter was because they never showed an ID. So it's just common sense to require photo ID. It's inexpensive. Almost everybody has a photo ID already. I've been a poll watcher in at least 3 elections, and virtually everyone that walks into that polling station has their photo ID with them, usually a driver's license, because they drove to get to the polling station. It is not a burden. In fact, recently as 2016, the Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, a federal court, appellate court, held that photo ID, Virginia's then photo ID requirement, did not impose an undue burden on minority voting, and there was no evidence of racial discriminatory intent in that.
Yeah,
so let's return to photo IDs. It's your responsibility to ensure the sanctity of the vote.
Ms. Nichols, I believe you're with us. And we are going to need to keep these things very, very crisp because we've got a lot we've got to get through and a very short time to do that. But we don't want to give everybody a chance. So, Ms. Nichols, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. There were 15,419 ballots cast during early voting in the Virginia 2022 general election where the registered address on record was flagged as invalid by an NCOA, which is National Change Address Database Check. If you included addresses that were identified as 90-day vacant, the total rise to over 17,000, exactly 17,244. We need to have this. One of the issues that I have constantly heard from the other side against this is that, well, people, it's a generic everything. People can't get this, people can't get that. But what they cannot do is actually clarify who exactly cannot get these IDs and why it is that they're unable to help them get the IDs. So generic needs to stop. We need to get specific items, specific people, and target those to get those IDs. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have also Ann Gregorian. Ms. Gregorian, are you with us?
Yes, I'll be brief. I agree with everything that's been said. I also want to point out that in the polls, when you're in the polls and people are bringing in as an ID, the precinct notification that was sent to them because they're a registered voter, I would like to point out that there were 2,771 voters canceled after declaring themselves non-citizens that were actually given voter registration. So in order for them to vote, all they had to do was show up with the precinct redistrict notification that was sent to them by elect. So there's been so many parameters and guardrails in the last few years taken down regarding registration, ability to vote, mail-in voting, early absentee voting, no ID. This needs to come back simply because the guardrails on our voter system are so diminished that we need some form of ID to ensure that people such as the non-citizens are not actually showing up. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. And now Anyone against? I see, let's see, Gayleen Knoyton. Ms. Knoyton, are you?
Good morning. My name is Gayleen Knoyton. I'm the Political Action Chair for the Virginia NAACP, and we strongly oppose these bills. It's a form of voter suppression. Just recently, we had just put in a FOIA to the Attorney General's office, and one of the questions asked, were there any major fraud issues with voting since 2008? And the question was no. And so we strongly oppose these bills. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. All right, Delegate Ware, we'll give you the last word.
Mr. Chairman, I've made my case, and I know you're under a schedule. I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you. Well, the committee operates by motion. We have a motion and a second to report House Bill 1444 with the substitute. Yeah. All right, so everyone will please vote on the board. And clerk will close the roll, and House Bill 1444 reports with a vote of 5-3. Thank you, Delegate Ware. And Delegate Ware, you will allow Delegate Wyatt to be Chief Co on your bill. Then we will take action on his.
Be pleased to do that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
So considering that, then I will entertain a motion to table 1467. All right. We have a motion and a second to table House Bill 1467. Everyone please vote on the board. And House Bill 1467 is tabled on a vote of 8-0. All right. Thanks very much. Moving along, we now have Delegate Simons, House Bill 1796. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This bill makes a very small change to the code that will make a big difference to some electoral boards who want to encourage more young people to work as officials on Election Day. It was brought to me by someone who has a page program, and some of the pages wanted to work on Election Day and be paid, but they were not able to actually pay the pages as the code is currently written. The bill would allow a person who has pre-registered to vote to qualify to be an election officer and get paid. And the bill would benefit localities because students are hardworking and they're tech savvy. And this would allow electoral boards to train a whole new crop of Election Day officials to keep polls open and fully staffed. For the students, the benefits include making money, getting meaningful work experience, resume building, learning about local government, elections, and getting some professional contacts in their community. So I really do think it's a win-win. I know it's hard to be a mentor sometimes, and it's hard to reach out to the next generation, but I do feel that we have a lot of adults in the community that have it on their heart to work with young people, and I think this would be a good opportunity. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Any questions for the committee for Delegate Simons?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Delegate Simons, I'm just trying to understand who this would apply to. This is under the code section. Your amending is the appointment qualifications terms of officers of election. So right now, the qualifications require that such person be a qualified voter of the precinct in which he is appointed to serve. This would create an exemption for that otherwise blanket requirement for someone who is pre-registered to vote pursuant of the code section.
Yes. So
is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We brought this problem of the Board of Election officials not being able to use their pages on Election Day and pay them. And we presented it to LIS. And that's the way they fixed it, is by allowing people who are pre-registered to vote, and they have to be pre-registered, in that locality to work as Election Day officials.
Question for council. How many officers are there for each precinct? I think it's not less than 3 competent citizens shall be appointed. What's the general number on that?
I think that would vary, Mr. Chairman. I think that would vary from precinct to precinct, locality especially. The minimum is 3. I believe we have to have 2 representing the party of the governor and 1 representing the party of the candidate who's not the governor. But as far how many the most would have, I'm not quite sure. If there was anyone from the Department of Elections, but I don't see anyone here. But they would hopefully have that information.
I can speak from personal experience as an election officer, and for the special election, we only had 5 in our precinct, and during voting, we might have had 12 because you also have officers doing cleaning services.
Okay. All right. Any other questions,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
for the delegate. So the pre-registration process, what would be the age of these individuals?
They would be 16 and 17.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Hi, Deb Wake, League of Women Voters. We do support this bill. 16-year-olds that have taken the step of pre-registering to vote should be encouraged to learn more about voting. And I can testify that when there have been pages working in the precinct where I've been working, they have very limited capabilities as a page. And so making them a full officer would allow them to more fully participate. Thank you.
Okay. And anyone else to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if there's someone else in favor. I'm in the neutral position, but wanted to make a comment, so I'll defer to anybody else who's in favor.
Right. Yes, sir. I'd love to hear from you. So,
Mr. Chairman, David Bailey, speaking on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association. Only this morning, and I apologize to the patron, got word to her that the registrars do have some concerns. They, like I think all of us, would like to see our young people more involved. I have a 16-year-old in the family, and he's quite mature. But the way the bill is drafted, we think it needs some work and pledge to work with the delegate and with any of the rest of you. Delegate Adams raised some questions, but to work with you prior to the next session to see if there are certain responsibilities that a 16 or 17 pre-registered could do. But we think that the draft before you needs some work.
Mr. Chairman, a question for Mr. Bailey. If we were to pass this out of the subcommittee, would you be able to and willing to work with the patron between now and the time that it goes to the full committee?
Certainly, you all, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Reed, you all established policy, and we would work. I will read you part of the statement that came in late last night that I shared with the patron, that they're concerned about, particularly if there were 16-year-olds, being able to not legally sign the oath of office, sign the statement of results, other documents, and the penalties in Chapter 10 of Title 24.2. They're concerned that some of the minors could not take up the responsibilities, but we certainly would work if you choose to do what you said, Delegate Reed.
Okay. All right. We have some folks signed up online for this. Speaking in favor, let's see, Ms. Knoyton.
Yes, we support this bill, the Virginia NAACP. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Also, Ms. Nichols, are you with us? See you there?
Yes, I am. But I would like to state, number one, this is not exactly possible. As the comments were made before, I have been a poll worker and stuff. You have to sign a number of tapes, a number of oaths, and things like that. And that requires somebody over the age of 18 who can actually sign for themselves. You're talking about minors. You could give them different jobs and stuff, but there are things that they have to be an adult to be able to sign basically a contract. So that right there really lets them out of doing anything of this. My surprise was to see that that was not investigated and actually put forth before the bill was put forth, because that, like I said, if you're a poll worker, you automatically know what goes on before and after when everybody's in and out. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And now I've got one in opposition online, Ms. Gregorian.
Yes, thank you. I feel that this is a misplaced education effort. The law provides mock elections can be conducted in the classrooms. I would suggest that 16-year-olds stay in their classrooms and conduct classroom activities to this end. I would also like to point out that this is a violation of the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2 of the Virginia Constitution says, an election by the people, qualifications shall be as follows. Each voter shall be a citizen of the United States, shall be 18 years of age, shall fulfill the residence requirements set forth, and shall be registered to vote. 16-year-olds are neither 18 years old, neither are they registered to vote. I know there's a push to get them to register to vote. I noticed the wording in this bill was specific to pre-registered, which last year 16-year-olds were allowed to pre-register. So 16-year-olds do not belong in a spot where only adults should be per the Constitution of Virginia. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Any other questions from the committee? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, these are for council. I just have two quick questions. Question one, Meg, is in terms of the officers of election, if somebody wants to be an officer of election, do they get to be an officer of election? In other words, is there discretion to choose who is an officer of election?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Van Valkenburg, yes.
Second question, follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
In other words, an immature 16-year-old could be not hired as an officer of election because they have discretion to pick officers of election.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Van Valkenburg, that's correct.
And then one final follow-up, Mr.
Delegate
Chair.
Van Valkenburg.
Now I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. So I'm done.
It happens to the best of us. That's okay. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just may I real
yes,
quick?
ma'am.
I just wanted to, just for note, is that at 16, we ask our young people to go to work, pay taxes. We give them a driver's license if they so qualify. They have the ability to go to court, get a ticket. Actually, I got a ticket the first day I got my license, to be quite honest. So when we look at the responsibility of a 16-year-old, we are asking a lot of them. We're asking them to mature. And I think this is absolutely a way for them to be a little bit more participatory in process. And I think Delegate Van Valkenburg sort of pointed out is that there is discretion that can be used here. But let us not degrade our young people to just classrooms. Let us know that they are a staple in our communities and a part of this system to which they will be participatory in once they're past the pre-registration cycle. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Delegate Simons, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. I think that this is an interesting idea. It might need a little bit more work is what I'm hearing, but I really agree with Delegate Glass. Young people, we need young people. And we need to nurture them while they're still in our communities. We have this issue where young people go to college and then they leave and they go to other states. While they're in their hometown, we need to make sure they know about all the civic opportunities and we need to nurture them. And I think that there's a great need out there for more election officers. And I really do think it could be a win-win in the long run.
All right. Thank you very much. Committee operates by motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to report the bill and encourage the patron and the stakeholders to have some additional discussions before it comes to the full committee.
We have a motion and a second. We have a substitute motion.
And speaking to the motion, Mr. Chair, the motion would be to lay the bill on the table for the reasons stated by some of the speakers from the public, and that someone under the age of 18 is legally under a disability to engage in a contract and swear an oath, and I think that's very problematic to them serving as election officers.
Second.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and second to table. House Bill 1796. That is non-debatable. So let's vote on the board. And House Bill 1796 is tabled on a vote of 5-4. All right. Thank you, Delegate Simons. All right. Moving ahead, I'm going to jump ahead for just a moment. We'll go ahead and call on Delegate Loxman, if you will come tell us about House Bill 2234.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members, and staff. I'm here to present House Bill 2234. Basically, what the bill does is roll back the same-day voter registration clause. It keeps the previous exemptions intact, but it does remove the general public. This bill kind of came about in my locality. It's a very rural locality. They have a difficult time finding poll workers, and the reports that I received on election day was all of the major problems they had at the polls were related to same-day voter registration. My area, a lot of the poll workers are elderly retired people, and whenever somebody would come up to the table to do same-day voter registration, it basically shut down the workflow at the registration table. So that's the reason that I'm bringing this before you today.
All right, questions for the patron? All right. Delegate Van Valkenburg? Okay. All right.
Anyone in the audience here to speak in favor of House Bill 2234? Anyone to speak against House Bill 2234?
Hi, Deb Blake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We urge you to vote no on this bill. Same-day voter registration was implemented for the 2022 general election. Thousands of eligible voters were able to register to vote and cast their ballots without incident. Because the newly registered voters cast their ballots provisionally, the registrars were able to verify the voters, weeding out any who were, for example, in the wrong precinct. Same-day voter registration is an overall success and should not be denied. And anecdotally, as an election officer, at the end of the day, I think about what laws might help voters to be able to exercise their right to vote. And often same-day voter registration the lack of that has been a barrier. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Jennifer Vanny, Fairfax County. We oppose this bill for disenfranchisement reasons.
All right. Thank you. All right, and online, let's see, we've got Lori Moore. Ms. Moore, are you with us? Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm in favor of House Bill 2234, repealing same-day registration with 3 exceptions. Election day should be reserved for voting. If somebody wants to register to vote, they can do so 364 days a year, including weekends and holidays. That is ample time. Election day is inherently a busy and chaotic 24-hour period for all those who are responsible for administering the elections. Why add to those burdens? House Bill 2234 restores to the registrar the necessary time to properly verify that a registrant is eligible to vote before they vote. The 2 distinct activities of registering and voting must not be conflated. Repealing same-day registration with 3 exceptions would also eliminate the extra work placed on registrars and their electoral boards of having to consider additional provisional ballots at a time that they are preparing final paperwork for submission to the State Board of Elections. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Nichols.
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, it helps the registrars because the amount of work that they have to do with everything getting shoved up to that day is really hard. For the most part, one of the things that we found between Chesapeake and Virginia Beach, they pretty much vote in the last 2 weeks. That's a lot of work to sit there and do. They have a 25% turnover. I know at least every election So there's more new people that you're trying to deal with. It's not as stable as it used to be. So anything that is going to help the registrars and especially the volunteers and stuff on that day, that is what we need to do. Again, we see too many times where we get a generic, oh, it's going to stop us from voting, it's going to be harder or whatever like that. But we have yet to see where the side that claims that actually does quantifies that and actually claims to help out those people that don't. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Gregorian.
Yes, thank you once again. I just want to briefly say that convenience, so many times in these last 2 years, convenience is being used as an excuse to subvert the proper process. I'll point out again, through the proper registration process, there were over 2,771 voters who were non-citizens who landed on our voter rolls and received a voter registration number. It's not just that they applied, they made it through the entire process. So when you scrunch this into the very small, chaotic space known as Election Day, I can't imagine how people that are registering that day are getting properly vetted when others that have the full vetting process through the list maintenance program still made it through and they should not have been on the list. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And speaking against, I got signed up Ms. Knoyton.
Good morning. The Virginia NAACP is strongly against this bill. We want to create more opportunities for voters to vote. They vote provisionally, so it is checked after the election. And the more opportunities that we can get a person to come out and vote, especially young folks, same day works. And there was not really any fraud whatsoever behind same day voting, and we strongly are against this bill.
All right. Delegate Waxman, I'll give you the last word again. Oh, sorry about that. My screens are off position here for a minute. So Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Good. Speaking to the bill, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I would hope we would defeat this bill. Once again, I find myself in a position where the one person we haven't talked about when we're talking about these issues are voters. We're talking about registrars, we're talking about this, we're talking about that. And it's ultimately about voters and giving voters access to their democracy. And, some of the aspersions that are cast on this, they vote provisionally. They do have to be checked. Their identification does have to be verified, right? So that's, we've had a couple of the most secure and stable elections we've had in the last couple of years. And if you understand the history of voter registration and arbitrary cut dates, they were first put in place in order to lower voter turnout. I don't think you even have to talk about that to talk about why this voter registration same day is good, because it's just good for voters, which means it's good for citizens. But that history is there and it is real, and you can read about it. And so, while I understand that registrars getting used to something new don't like it, and I understand their concerns, that's true of any job when you get a new policy. I mean, I'm a teacher. We get new policies thrown at us all the time by a lot of the people here sitting at these tables. And we adapt and we do it because that's our job. It's the registrar's job. Like, your job is to serve voters. And so I would hope that we would defeat this bill. It worked. We saw it work. It worked this year. It was a great thing. And I would hope we would continue it. And I hope we would defeat this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Van Valkenburg. I will take the opportunity to just weigh in one thought that you bring to my mind, since I have the microphone here. And that is, we do need to think about voters and the voters that find elections to be perhaps questionable because of policies that we put into place as well. And if you do anything that undermines integrity of the elections in the minds, whether it's real or not, perception is reality for a lot of people. And so we need to consider all of the voters, not just the ones that are trying and deciding at the last minute that they've decided that they want to exercise their right to vote, which they do have, and we need to make sure that they are able to do that, but in a timely fashion. That's my opinion. But I will cease weighing in, and we'll just say again that the committee does operate by motion.
Move to report.
Have a motion to report. And second? All right, so we will vote on the board. has everyone voted? So House Bill 2234 reports on a vote of 5-3. All right. Thank you, Delegate Waxman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And in consultation with the patron, House Bill 1847 is our last remaining today. And I know the patron has a couple of things that will need to still be worked on. That has asked that we take that by for the day. I would entertain that motion. Have a motion and second from someone. Second. Thank you. And so we will take then all in favor say aye. Aye. Very good. So House Bill 1847 is taken by for the day, and that completes our docket. Thank you very much for your service this morning, committee, and the committee will rise.